Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Wednesday, April 15th. Uh, Trying to start a little bit later. I don't think 6 and 7 in the morning is probably the best time. Um, Although I really don't know what the best time is or if my insomnia could work around that. Let's see, we have to re-roll this one. Or I'm going to choose to re-roll this one. And this workshop is happening, and it started like 2 hours into Monday's live stream, and it's about to end in 2 hours. So let's hop to it and get another Haversack of Favor, which I still don't know what that actually gives me. We've got 3 decks here. Let's see if we can kind of quickly figure out what the concept is with these decks. It seems like a green-black deck that is built around zombies and green cards. This looks like a red-white deck that looks like the cards synergize some way, probably with buffs if I was to guess. Strength in numbers. Well, apparently by that name I would assume that means you summon a bunch of tokens or something. And then Wrath of the Mages looks like it's a blue-red, which is probably spells if I was to guess. I don't want to really look at the cards though, so let's just start with the green-black and play and see how this goes. And if we win, we win. Now, either right now or in the next update that's about to happen in like a day or two, they are going to change drafts so there's no longer draft bots. Fingers crossed that might improve my win rate in draft, but more than likely I would guess the opposite is just as likely to happen. Once I start playing against real people, they will be able to figure out how to beat me even better than the bots could. I suppose it's worth mentioning my little experiment on Monday's stream. Well, I'll see. You probably won't get that from too many bots. Where I was playing the anti-vaping, anti-smoking commercial that should be public domain, in my opinion. It got content ID claimed by somebody. I'm not going to say if it was the real person. Very, very high chance that it isn't the real person that actually would have any claim to what would be a publicly funded, created commercial, advertisement, public, for educational purposes, public safety notice. But it does go to show that I won't be using that, because nobody who makes YouTube videos wants to go through the hassle of having to fight an automatic content ID claim on potentially every single video they have, particularly for what was an idle screen that I don't even use the idle screen that much. So I just set it back basically to what it was. Although I removed the rules, because the rules and showing like the chat on screen, just things that aren't worth maintaining, because I have to copy and paste the URL and do different code to change the HTML to get the chat on screen. It's a pain in the butt and changes every few months. I had to even jump through hoops just to get the chat to show up on my cell phone today. For some reason the Chrome link sharing was not willing to work. So yeah, no solution there. If I was a content creator who really cared, I would just make my own pre-made content for the idle screen. And I certainly could do that, but it is really just the lowest of priorities, because there's way better things I can do with my time, such as pre-recording footage, or just organizing and scheduling videos, or just building up the critical energy that I need to play the next game or play the next pre-recorded thing, which is kind of what I did. I started playing Oxenfree, which is a 2013 game labeled as a graphical adventure. We may have to crash out here. The graphical adventure category is not something I've ever heard of before. It is kind of a walking simulator with a little bit more to it. Honestly, I would just classify it as a new generation point and click adventure game. That's where I would say Oxenfree lands, and I would not try to make a claim in any way that there's room under categorization for something called a graphical adventure, because you just don't need that description, really, because point and click adventures have always been graphical. So you're really just trying to emphasize that it's a point and click adventure, but it doesn't have a system where you pick up a lot of items and combine a bunch of items, or it doesn't have a verb system, which lots of point and click adventures don't have verb systems. That really is an exclusive LucasArts idea. I guess I should jump back and play with the green deck again, because we got that free victory and we really didn't get to play any of the cards. And the whole point of these events are to try and convince people to play with the cards some more. Oxenfree has some weird tonal shifts so far. It's incredibly slow. It took about 50 minutes before it even got to the point, and I'd already seen like reviews slightly talking about it, so I kind of knew that it already had some like time manipulation, sci-fi elements. It has more horror elements than what I remember being mentioned. You get prompted like a Telltale game with 3 dialogue choices that you have a timer to respond to, but unlike Telltale games, they don't always give you enough time to actually respond, and you cut off people if you respond too early, so it's just really terrible thing. Most people would never recognize or complain about the fact that when you're watching a movie or TV show, that every single character gives these long speeches and nobody ever interrupts them or talks over them. In Oxenfree, you interrupt and talk over people all the time, and it just ruins the dialogue that the writers wrote, or the writers have written. It's not good, and they don't repeat themselves. There's actually a lot of prompts where you get lines of dialogue too that you can't go back and hear those dialogue prompts again. So my fear is that you might get to the end of the game and it might say, were you really paying attention? And I might very well go, no, actually not enough to answer as many questions. In fact, I kind of know that's going to happen because I already ran into a sequence that did exactly that. So yeah, they subtly have foreshadowed that you were supposed to pay attention to every little conversation. But the problem also with Oxenfree is you'll walk onto one screen and it will be a deathly serious scene that is in line with the events that have occurred up until that point, and then you'll walk to another scene and it'll be just a chill, relax, like chat while you're strolling through the forest, because it seems like there's different directions, and that triggers events to happen in different orders, and that just hurts the story writing. What really hurt the story is they start off. It is a group of 5 junior high school students. So you're talking 16, 17, 18-year-olds, 16 and 17 more than likely. They've come to an island where apparently all the kids go to like get to drink and party, which is somewhat believable, but a little weird that you would get on a ferry. Yeah, it's pretty weird that you would get on a ferry and bother to even try to get to an island without some adult stopping you somewhere. But somehow all these kids from this high school are capable of getting on a ferry, going to this island. It would be like a field trip island during the day, but they're sneaking onto it and drinking beer on the beach and whatever meets a pot brownie. That's not confusing or out of line. A lot of the writing feels at times like Life is Strange, and in its good points, Life is Strange also feels in line. But what really, really broke it is they talk about this game called Truth or Slap. And you're like, don't you mean Truth or Dare? And they go, no, it's like Truth or Dare, but without the dares, because if you play Truth or Dare, somebody ends up licking someone's behind. I'll censor it that way. And I'm like, where in the world did that come from? Like, seriously, I don't think most junior high kids are playing Truth or Dare to such an extreme, really. That's really, really, really insane, and just out there said by one character, the same character who seems to not even have enough guts to admit in the same Truth or Slap game that he likes another girl in the group. It's like they ask him directly out, does he like that girl? He lies and says no, and I'm like, why are you lying and saying no? Why don't you just say yes? You just said in the previous scene that you wanted to begin romantically pursuing this girl. This is the perfect opportunity to say yes. So just weird mentality there, and that scene had nothing to do with anything. It was just trying to kind of establish what they thought was going to happen, and it has basically no connection to what actually does happen, because like very quickly after that point you've either broken time or broken reality, and you're running into alternate realities and time loops and things like that, and all the people get separated. And I'm at a point now, about 3 hours into the game, where I'm trying to get people back together, and it seems like the game is going to make it so you never really get back together with any of the characters until the very end of the game. And you're just seeing like creepy scenes and some very simplistic creepy puzzles, and it really is kind of like an 8-bit point-and-click adventure or horror game that very possibly would have been better suited. This deck wasn't too bad. It seems like it synergized quite nicely. I'm really having to wonder, since there's just so much of a focus in Oxenfree, on story, if it wouldn't have been better just depicted as kind of a visual novel, because you really are just going from one of maybe 7 locations. So and the walking mechanic and the climbing up and down ladders and stairs mechanic is much like the cave, just there to kind of waste your time. The only thing that makes it slightly not a complete waste of time is that you have a radio, and there is a radio tuning into specific frequencies, almost like a combination lock sometimes. Sometimes you have to tune into one frequency, sometimes you have to tune into 2 or 3 in order to trigger things. So maybe by the time you're at the end of the game, you'll realize there's a lot more you can do with the radio to trigger things. And that might, and you have to tune in the radio while standing in specific spots to trigger things. So that might be part of the gameplay, the main gameplay mechanic that necessitates the ability to walk around. But in the first 3 hours, it's been at least 85% just walking around for no reason. And as you're walking around, on a few cases, I've walked around and no conversation has even triggered or happened. In a few other cases, there have, in most cases, there is a conversation, but it doesn't work. Let's see, kicker. Can I do kicker? No, I can't, so let's see. Kicker, sacrifice creature. So we've got like 2 kicker cards. But we need something that would make kicker cards synchronize with something. If the kicker mechanic is going to be any kind of mechanic that people actually care about and want to use. So yeah, Oxenfree is like the first game from a company called Night School Studio. Came out about 3 years after the cave, and is definitely less like cutesy in its animation style, and definitely less just on the nose with its story compared to the cave. And I thought it would be a pretty good comparison to the cave, the Telltale game. Oddly, Night School Studios, I want to be sure not to call it Night Dive Studios, went on after that to work with Telltale to make a Mr. Robot game, and then they made the game After Party. But Oxenfree does kind of feel like it made some mistakes in its design as far as being able to cut people off in conversation and having conversations just kind of randomly pop up in any order based on the path you took. It feels like there's a good chance that there is a good chance that the game might go in a time loop once you've played it all the way through once, and so I might have to play the events of the story a second time, which might explain why it's somewhat short and curt and abrupt. But it could just be any number of weirdness, because it has gone all over the place with weirdness. You've seen time loops, you've seen strange voices, maybe aliens, maybe ghosts, science, government conspiracies. That they're throwing everything at the wall to see what will stick, and the danger of writing like that is at a certain point it's just going to be so unrealistic as far as interesting. Why did I get the city's blessing? -2, -2. Alright, let's do that. And is there anything? Let's go ahead and play this again, I guess. And then we'll go ahead and attack with this. So yeah, there's a danger that I won't really relate to the characters as much as I should. There's a danger that it will go the path of Life is Strange and have people writing teenage characters so obviously the wrong way or unrealistically that it doesn't really work. There's a danger that compared to something like The Walking Dead, Oxenfree is just not going to be anywhere as good as that. So it's really on shaky ground, and there's also danger that it's just going to be too long and too boring, which is another potential problem. Let's see if we can win here. Even if I don't win here, I do kind of see that these seem to be somewhat synergizing, at least enough that it makes sense that things could happen. Is that what this does? What does this do? City's Blessing. Well, I have City's Blessing, great. What does that do? I can't afford that. So let's play this. And then, can I attack here? Yes, I can. But did I just lose the game because of that? I don't know. But on the bigger perspective, whether or not I find Oxenfree particularly amazing, I am kind of getting back into the habit, like, of pre-recording footage. I'm still not doing amazingly great with the insomnia. I am weirdly sleeping at times, and there was a slight danger here around 6 in the morning that I was gonna fall asleep, and then we would have had a late night stream tonight. I also am still giving a couple games to Gwent on my phone, just trying to really see if there's kind of anything there, and just because playing it out of boredom. I also installed Honkai 3rd Impact, or Impact 3rd, on my cell phone, which looks like a fine game as kind of a half gacha, half action beat 'em up game. It has kind of like a Bayonetta bullet time, witch time experience in it, where if you dodge it at the exact precise moment, time slows down and you can beat up on people faster and do more damage. But you're playing it on your phone, so there's just a touchscreen analog stick and touchscreen buttons. And since the last thing my arthritic fingers need, there's yet another game where I'm just mashing buttons like crazy. It really isn't a candidate for me. Plus, I don't think it feels like it's going to go anywhere, really. A lot of these gacha games barely have any characters, and they're so built around getting paying to get the collectibles that it's not a good experience at all. even the other idle gacha game that I'm testing out, it has clearly several things that you can only get if you're what they call VIP level 1 or higher, and you only go up from VIP level 0 if you buy something. So in other words, if you have to be VIP level 3, you have to have bought 3 things or spend a certain amount of money, and it is just so blatant and obvious. And the game that has this has like terrible translation to English. The story doesn't make any sense because of the translation. It doesn't really even look 100% like it is a game with original art. It very easily could be they just pre-bought some art and slapped it together and made something that was decent enough. But yeah, anything that you can't fully enjoy as a free-to-play game is not something I'm interested in. And that's the same with Gwent. Gwent's pretty obviously 10 damage. Interesting. Let's see, target permanent. So that lets me draw a card. But if you kick something... Oh, that was a spell, so that did it the right way. So I was thinking that was a creature, and I was like, wait, well, if you kick a creature and then it ends up in your graveyard after you do the kicker, then that doesn't work at all. This feels like this might be the end game. Just have a bunch of sorcery spells and instants in the graveyard at the end of the game. Well, I don't have much else to talk about. I think I did play some Hearthstone. Not Hearthstone, but Magic Arena. Maybe a little bit yesterday, or at least I got 15 victories the day before, as we are on the verge of the expansion ending. So I got some more cards. Maybe we can show them in the collection if they're still highlighted. I wouldn't be surprised if they're not. Also seems like a new leaf has been turned for one reason or another with the adult games on Steam, because there's some more adult games that came out on Steam, and you would have thought that they would have put the brakes on that. It could have been there was just a prioritization there that is no longer happening, as regular games, non-adult games, are not really getting released in high volume on Steam. YouTube also apparently is thinking about or pitching the idea of having some big time YouTubers pay YouTube to pre-evaluate their videos to make sure that they're not demonetized. Basically then just bribing YouTube to not be demonetized, which, like, I don't know how that doesn't just at some point become a racket where YouTube made the rules and threatened all content creators with the fear of being demonetized for very nebulous reasons, which they'll never explain, even if you do pay them, almost certainly. And now they're going to pitch the idea of having people pay them, and I don't think they have a clue as far as what that would actually, what they would want people to charge for that. Let's see, can we do this? So, 1, 2. I've got a lot here. 1, 2, 3. That's 8. 9, 10. Not those two, actually. Let's get rid of that and that. Submit. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hmm. 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Why is this not working? Ah, because I don't have enough mana. Well, that sucked. That was worth it, I suppose, to try. Can we kick her this guy? Nope, we don't have enough cards. And we can't do that. So we can't do anything. Alright. This is a little bit too slow of a game. Gameplay style. So I think more and more we are going to just have to jump into the news, let whatever happens happens, and then kind of wrap up early. For kind of years, it's constantly been a case when I was playing either Magic or previously Hearthstone. It's been a case where we've just gone rather long, at least because 50% of it having to do with there being a lot of news. So now is a great time to say, hey, there isn't a lot of news, let's take it easy, let's do 2-hour streams, yeah, and just get it done. In particular, since the news that is coming out isn't even that important of news, I'm getting declining return as far as the way I've been playing a card game and talking about and looking at video game news and video games that have come out, because that's information that I, as a video game critic, I want to be informed upon when it is relevant. But if there really is no relevancy anymore because the things that are coming out are just bottom of the barrel Steam things for the most part, that's kind of silly. So this is available from purchase until April the 16th, and the season ends in 15 days. So we actually, but the set rotation ends in 21 hours. So they're separate. So I think, yeah, today's the 15th. Tomorrow is when the new cards come out. Maybe we'll do a special video, special pack opening video. I guess that would be the right thing to do, and then probably not do a draft until Friday. Then we're at rank 111 according to the current level, which doesn't seem like you go above rank 111, even if you do. And yeah, none of the new cards that I got last time are still highlighted. Okay, black, play standard ranked, and let's play and see if we win. And then let's just cover the news, because there's really not anything else to do. I think part of the problem with Oxenfree is that How Long to Beat says it's a 7-hour game, and it probably would have been better as a 4-hour game, with some just editing down. It's also kind of, it might have been better if they had done it more like a visual novel instead of like a point-and-click adventure, considering how there's very little point-and-click adventure stuff. You are playing a teenage girl as the main character with her new stepbrother following you around for the vast majority of the game, it seems. So you would think that that might be like an Indiana Jones and Fate of Atlantis type game where the stepbrother would just make snide comments or act as a straight man to the comedic actions or things you would say as the main player. But instead, it really is more of a attempt at being a touching, getting to know you story between the two characters, and them asking each other about their histories and what their life was like before their parents probably got married. And there's a lot of backstory being hinted at. And for a brief time in Oxenfree, it felt like if you said something happened in the past, you just made it happen in the past. I think Kentucky Route Zero does that. It seems like that's probably not the case in this instance. It seems like there are some story elements about your stepbrother's mother dying, or your biological brother dying. There's quite a lot of death in the story, and I think it's going to play a factor. You hear a lot of stories and radio bits that are talking about horrific events where people died, or at least bad things happened in general. There's also a lot of red herring, or at least it seems like red herring radio stations you can tune into that I'm afraid are going to potentially get content ID'd. Not that I really care about that these days, but it does kind of suck if I put 7 hours into this game and then there's ads running on every single episode that are just promoting somebody else. But yeah, I suppose the faster we get through this, the faster I can get back to that and burn through it. I probably need to play some AAA shooter or AAA game of some sort after this. Having only one game means there's kind of no more the concept of having time slots and having an attempt to have some more generic, less niche games covered on my channel. Instead, it's more of I'm more attempting to just keep it somewhat diverse by jumping from one to the other. Honestly, if I knew Oxenfree was going to be as horrific as some of the scenes are, I would have considered playing it for Halloween, but it's not so obviously horrific. In a weird way, it kind of feels like the cat lady, but it's nowhere that weird or scary. Although I probably am about the worst person to say if something is scary or not. I don't think anything scares me as much as it seems other people get scared. I was watching a video talking about like the Beetlejuice cartoon, and I realized that I probably watched a lot of Beetlejuice cartoon episodes and don't even remember it. And I definitely remember playing with like Mighty Max toys and the Ghostbusters cartoons. So I definitely was around that generation of all the cartoons being horrific monster stories, and none of that scared me at all. So I don't know if the newer generation is a bunch of scary cats, or because they're not watching cartoons like that, or if people realize that was probably a bad idea. Anyways, video game news. Gamatsu has an article. Office Create issues a statement regarding unauthorized release of Cooking Mama Cookstar. Office Create is evaluating legal actions against Planet Entertainment. So this was the story that we had heard a little bit about, but they were being rather quiet. Let's see. According to Office Create, the company licensed Cooking Mama's intellectual property to Planet Create in August. Building August 2018. Development builds of the game did not meet the quality standards. The company rejected a wide range of deficiencies affecting the overall feel, quality, and content of the game, which Planet Entertainment were contractually obliged to correct. However, Planet Entertainment proceeded to release the game without addressing all the issues and without Office Create's approval. Now, and I guess the real question is that legal under their contract, or is this just the biggest attempt at breaking a contract in video game history since the last huge attempt at breaking a contract, which probably happens a lot. Like, I wouldn't particularly describe the video game industry as a bastion of honest business people. Let's see. Company also addressed the unauthorized PlayStation 4 version of Cooking Mama called Cookstar. Let's see. Apparently, according to Office Create, it did not license Planet Entertainment to develop a PlayStation 4 version of the game at all. Wow. So not only did they release Cooking Mama Cookstar on the Switch without their approval, they made an entire version that they allegedly didn't authorize. It would be an interesting twist if it turns out that history finds the exact opposite was true, and they Planet Create was actually authorized to do these things. But I would say that's pretty unlikely. Like, even if they weren't happy with the quality and Office Create, the publisher, wanted to kind of disassociate themselves from the game, you would just kind of not mention it. You wouldn't go out of your way to say, to blame the company that way, because you're burning a lot of bridges. Both of them are, depending on who acted first. Like, after all is said and done here, I doubt anybody is going to license anything to Planet Create. And I also kind of doubt too many people are going to go to Office Create and ask for the Cooking Mama license or any other properties they may own as a license, because it could be that they both are pains in the butt to deal with, and it's not worth it to do business with either company. Moving on, OpenCritic has an article here. The latest Nintendo Switch update includes button remapping. It seems to have several updates, version 10.0.0. So button remapping is interesting and probably helpful as an accessibility features. You can now transfer software data between the system's memory and the SD card. Downloadable software, update data, and DLC from the Switch can be sent over to an SD card, and vice versa. But some data cannot be sent to an SD card. What's interesting is it seems like the update data would be the thing that you couldn't put on a memory card, because it feels like it would be rather easy to hex edit update data on a SD card and then jailbreak a Switch just by doing that, whereas the current method of jailbreaking a Switch is a lot more complicated than that. It also, for most people, is more important to mention that you can't You can't move save data over, I don't believe, at all. Which would be the one thing you would want to be able to move to a memory card, is have all the save data of one child on one memory card. You pop that out, put in the other child's memory card, and have all the save data there. And that's where I think Nintendo is dropping the ball more than anywhere else. Come on, block something, please. Please block something, yeah. That was not the thing I wanted blocked, though. The update also allows you the ability to bookmark news items, up to 300 news items. The bookmarks seem to be held in the cloud, though, and I'm not sure what the news items really mean so much. And I'm not sure if there's really any other things, just general improvements, maybe some stability and frame rate improvements in general. There is a rumor that there's a mention of a new hardware revision of the Switch. I seriously doubt a new version of the Switch would come out anytime soon, and even if it did, it would probably be nothing all that different. Although it seems to imply that maybe they would add a second screen. I don't know how they would really want to do that, frankly, as like some kind of accessory or other item. That's about all I could think, is that they'd throw it in a second screen attachment, or they would just split the one physical touch screen into two screens. That way they could support the transferring of the libraries of 3DS and 2DS items, games to the Switch, which I would imagine they would be really happy to be able to pull that off if they could. Alright. Now put that back on the field. And play this. And he'll sacrifice these three almost certainly. And then I can play a couple more, one of which can block this character. OpenCritic has an article here. Sony has announced a stay-at-home initiative. Several more companies have. And they are talking in general that unless a vaccine is found, we might have to socially isolate as much as into the 2022. So like 2 years, and frankly, the number could just keep going up and up and up. It could be for all future eternity, and even if a vaccine is found, there's some major changes that need to be implemented anyways, as far as just supply lines being strengthened, sanitary procedures in general being strengthened, getting rid of the idea of handshaking and social contact in general, as much as it happens in the West. I got a booster pack and 3 trading cards on Steam. and I don't know why I got any of those. Like, it was a Bayonetta booster pack, which I don't feel like I crafted a Bayonetta booster pack, but let's say I had a purchase order on the Steam market for that. Believable, sure. That's possible. I tend to have some purchase orders at like lowball prices of some of that stuff, so that would make some sense. But then 3 specific trading cards for Human Resource Machine in particular, that doesn't make any sense. I haven't played that game anytime, so why would I get drops from that? I wouldn't be eligible, and even if I was eligible for a booster pack, these were individual trading cards. So I don't know if maybe Steam's website went a bit wonky there, or if they're just doing something weird or being nice. But it was kind of cool, I suppose. Okay. Attack here. And win. We're gonna go back up to silver tier 1. Good. I'd like to lock in on gold. I don't think I'm gonna get much higher than gold though. And yeah, we're getting more cards, better cards. Although more cards and better cards may not really matter so much pretty soon as standard shifts out. I suppose when the current standard shifts, and I'll probably want to go rather hard on the next 4 expansions and try to get a lot more cards and try to build decks that can kind of win early and have a lasting impact for the next year or 2, which I don't know if I'd really be playing Magic in a year or 2, but that's still the way I'd want to play. We have a game on Steam here called Sunwards and some Asian characters. It looks like it's a RPG, Asian RPG, action RPG. I would suspect that it might be a Chinese game though, because you have this single character. It looks like just 4 button prompts and life bars, and it's kind of a simplistic interface for a Chinese game. Like, it looks kind of polished, but it also doesn't seem like it has any story or anything, which is a little weird. It's $8.99. And this game is based on some dreams that always appeared during a period of fighting with depression. That's weird. English, Chinese, German, Russian. So yeah, I think it's a Chinese game. I'm gonna put it on the fall list and give it a chance, but odds are low that there's a full game here, and this isn't really more of a tech demo where you're just beating up on some enemies and walking through some generic asset flip platform places. Like, if there really is a full game there, if there's some collectibles, if there's some story, that looks very interesting. I will say, this character from a side profile, that hairdo looks a little bit more like a male protagonist from an anime than a female character. So there was something there. And then you have some really skinny arms and really skinny body size, and maybe cleavage that doesn't quite feel realistic because of that. Like, I've never been a real fan of the insane levels of let's make this character look like they're nothing but skin and bones, but then give them a G cup. Although in that case, that game was not anywhere that bad, but I certainly have seen a few games, or a few anime shows in particular, like that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Etheldia Pepper. I'm not going to bother to try and pronounce that again. It looks like it's like a MS Paint pixel art RPG game with maybe some other gameplay mechanic. It's $4.99 English only, and yeah, it doesn't look interesting at all. So not gonna do anything with that. Let's play this, and then do I want to play this? I think I kind of have to. Could attack with this, and he could try and defend with that, but then that would be a mistake. Gamasutra has an article. The latest iteration of EGM, that's Electronic Gaming Monthly, ceases publication of daily features. Which, okay. VGC was Video Game Chronicle, by the way, from the last stream, that they were reporting on the rumors of the possible on a possible remake of Resident Evil 4. Giant Bomb talked about it, and like, yeah, it does kind of seem like everybody has concerns, to say the least, as far as what would really happen if Capcom remakes Resident Evil 4 and makes it a completely different game, or what would really happen if Capcom remakes it and basically does nothing. Both of which are potential problems. And they emphasize something that I missed, where the director in charge of this remake apparently is a new guy, so they're putting a lot of faith in the new guy. And they're skipping over Resident Evil Code Veronica and Resident Evil Chronicles storylines, for better or worse. Yeah. And I don't know what they really do there. Like, if they remake Resident Evil 4 and that succeeds, then do you try and merge Resident Evil 5 and 6 into something? Do you skip those? Is the idea to remake 4 so it is in line with the Resident Evil storyline as it's being re-established? So will Leon be directly fighting Umbrella Corporation and Wesker, and is this some long roundabout way of undoing Wesker's death at the end of 5, I guess, is when Wesker dies? That might be exactly what they're trying to do, is that they're trying to get back to Wesker and somehow tie it back into Resident Evil 7. Almost lost there. But I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you fix 4, 5, or 6 to get back to 7, which is a first-person perspective horror game. Again, when 4 is clearly the most action game, action third-person perspective shooter in the whole series. One would have kind of assumed that the best move would have been to just ignore 4, 5, and 6 and continue moving forward. But they might do something really interesting there if Resident Evil 4 in the remake of the series did not include any of the storyline of Resident Evil 4 that exists now. If you literally are just not playing as Leon, you're not saving Ashley. Instead, you're doing a rewriting of what happens in like Code Veronica and Chronicles, and maybe some of the elements of 5 and 6 too. If you just go in a completely different direction, that would be great. I wouldn't even really hate it if 4 pulled some major shenanigans and introduced like a alternate dimension time travel concept, and they just said, oh, actually everything you've been playing up to this point that you thought was a remake, it's actually not a remake, it's an alternate timeline, and the original timeline still exists, so players of that can still enjoy that. That would be a rather interesting twist to say, here's Resident Evil 4, no Leon, no Ashley, no Salazar, we're not in Spain, we're not fighting Las Plagas, we're doing something either completely different or we're just telling the story from the perspective of Umbrella Corporation really being the main bad guys. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this year or even next year, maybe most video game websites will last a year. I wouldn't be surprised after that point though if the funding starts to completely run out. The funding has already been extremely low and tight on video game journalist sites anyways, and there will always be people who are passionate to write about video games, but if advertisement goes away, you're going to lose a lot of the mainstream major authors and such, and they may just all leave the business, which could be, in all honesty, the best thing that to ever happen to the video game industry is if we lost some major people that are part of the problem. That would probably be a great move, but you'd almost have to lose everybody, and you can see that's already kind of happened with some of the people. Like they've already gotten other jobs and moved to other places, and it's not like video game companies need mainstream video game journalists to review their games anymore, or it's any help at all in advertising. Speaking of advertising, the ESRB rather timidly is going to now tell people when there are random items in in-game purchases, aka loot boxes. So they're gonna try and warn parents that if a game has loot boxes as part of the label, but they're not going to use the phrase loot boxes in particular, because they are claiming some BS that parents don't really know what loot boxes are, and they don't want to really educate people what loot boxes are either. But yeah, I think a decent number of parents know what loot boxes are, and that they just want to put a different name on it. In the exact same way when there was that UK congressional or parliamentary hearing, it was either EA or Ubisoft's, one of the mouthpieces for one of those major companies go, we don't call them loot boxes, we call them surprise mechanics or something like that. Or we don't call them microtransactions, we call them surprise mechanics. I mean, it's just straight out of the propaganda handbook, really. Just always redefine, always change the subject. Like, that way, nothing nothing ever gets actually addressed because you can just throw mud and play semantics games forever. Okay, well, we're gonna have to do something here. And so, my guess is we're gonna have to do this. Next we have a game on Steam called Super Astros 2. It looks like it's just a frustration platformer, Super Meat Boy style game. Doesn't look particularly well drawn either. Early access, $10.99, English and Spanish Latin America. Okay. Not anything that would interest me. We had 2 stories, I believe, of people related to the video game industry who unfortunately died due to COVID-19, and I think this is probably just the beginning. I think we will fairly commonly for a while start to hear of people passing away in all kinds of industries. And I would, if I can throw some pessimism into the pot, there's people claiming that the curve is flattening, and they've been talking about the curve. One reason the curve might flatten that people don't seem to want to admit is, frankly, they may have just maxed out on the number of testing equipments and hospital beds. So it could be, yes, the curve has plateaued at the top, at the highest number as far as statistics they get, because there's just more and more people, or the same amount of people, who are stuck at their houses, unable to be in a hospital or unable to be tested and confirmed as having COVID-19. That too is a possibility. And so, yep. So it could be a long time. It could be a very short time too. I have no knowledge really at all. But people like to hear the good news and not consider the bad news. Ever. First story though we have here, Team Fortress 2 and Star Fox voice actor Rick May passed away. So he played the soldier in Team Fortress 2 from a stroke from COVID-19, and he played Peppy in Star Fox 64. He played an unnamed role in Claw. He played Wingnut in Langston and Pajama Sam 2, an unnamed role in Age of Empires 3, Marty Sardini in Dadfish and Freddy Fish 5, additional uncredited voices in SOCOM 2, Dr. M in Sly 3, and the Soldier in Team Fortress 2. So actually his entire voiceography or bibliography isn't even hugely large for somebody who's been working for 50 years. He very well, he was in American Graffiti before that, but he got around and he did things clearly enough that he's notable. And the phrase "do a barrel roll" was a phrase that he coined. Well, he didn't coin the phrase, but made famous from Star Fox. I may not have a story for the other character, but the other person was the programmer who invented the game of life, which is the dots that follow a certain set of rules to determine whether they grow and thrive or whether they die as colonies. I'm not sure he did anything else really of any kind of impressive work after that, and he would have been a very, very early programmer too. So he's in the line of someone like the programmer of Pong more than he is in the line of someone who would have programmed a Super NES game or a modern PlayStation 4 game or something like that. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. The Ludo Narracon 2020 exhibitor lineup and panels have been revealed. Ludo Narracon was this convention that they were trying to put on. It's, I guess, being somewhat hosted by Steam. I didn't realize that. Games that have story that matters in the video games is basically, I think, the way you would want to phrase what they're trying to highlight. They're not trying to push mindless first-person shooters, for instance. So there's a long list here of games. Let's see, Beholder 2 might be something worth mentioning, but a lot of these other ones are either games we've talked about and are kind of low tier, not super interesting games, or they've just been talked to death. Boyfriend Dungeon is by far the most overhyped game I've seen. Heaven's Vault, I thought that game was on permanent hiatus. NeoCab is, I believe, already out. Some of these are already out. Telling Lies is definitely already out. Annapurna Interactive as a company in general is showing up. Yes, Your Grace came out. The unfortunate through line for a lot of these games, though, are while they are heavily focused on telling a story, they also are kind of heavily bad. Like, not particularly the best games or the funnest games out there. And at this point, nobody in their right mind is going to any kind of convention. So this is going to be taking place between April 24th and 27th, and you're supposed to follow Steam's instructions on how to register and set a reminder, and basically they're going to just, I think, have you watch a bunch of ads for games that many of which were probably been hyped at E3 had E3 occurred. Let's see. TechRaptor has a business relationship with Nutaku, always worth mentioning. So they have a advertisement here for Nutaku's Monster Harem launches a dirty dungeon crawling goodness. So Nutaku has another game. I'm still thinking that all of their games, though, are played on a cell phone, on a web browser. So this seems to be it. Seems to be a cell phone game, but they're doing it via the browser. Interesting. So yeah, and it does just look like a generic kind of boring dungeon crawler. I might give it a look, but certainly couldn't show it on my channel. And what was really weird is at the same time they had another article. Nutaku Bunny Days event will make your Easter super lewd. So they had a whole event happening for Easter, which honestly is probably not a good idea. Having a sale for Easter when you're effectively a porn site could lead to more backlash than it probably will get you in positive attention. Like going after Christianity's most religious holiday, not a smart move. Yeah, particularly when you know and recognize that most Christians or most of Christian dogma at least is fairly conservative and would not be openly accepting or happy with the content that is on Nutaku. Next we have a game on Steam called Ghost for Everybody, which looks like it's probably an RPG Maker game. Maybe it's a bit more of a player versus player top-down twin-stick shooter using just something like RPG Maker. But either way, it doesn't look interesting. It's $13.99, English, and allegedly full audio. It's also called 2D roguelike in the description. So that's off. Also, let's see, I need one more mana producing item, and then we can start with Bowl Citadel. See, speaking of things that are bound to irritate Christians, TechRaptor has an article here for I Am Jesus Christ developer coming back with Noah's Ark. The game I Am Jesus Christ was I believe a low effort asset flip game where you were supposed to be able to run around and I think heal people and turn water to wine and such. And it seems like Noah's Ark is a similar style of game, or at least it's promising to be a similar style of game. Is there really a game playing as Noah from Noah's Ark? Well, part of the problem there is the actual story and how long it actually took Noah to build the Ark was an incredibly long amount of time. So, if you, and the description, I believe, it's been a while, a lot of that whole chapter is talking about the lengths and sizes and the types of wood used to build the Ark, not really telling any interesting stories. Now, if you set a game where you were playing as Noah and the Ark was already built, and then you were just doing the part about gathering seven couples of each clean animal and two couples and two of each unclean animal, which I believe was the amount, there might be something there, because then it would be like you're attempting to build a zoo, you're trying to wrangle and capture animals, like running around and capturing animals might be a game there. Like, we haven't done a lot of that, certainly, and it would be a lot like a rodeo game in a weird way, because you would have to like lasso animals and throw nets over smaller creatures, and there would just be a lot of things there, and certainly it can't be hyper realistic because it'd be rather boring to catch thousands and thousands of different species. But maybe you could play with that idea if you wanted to do it, but I don't know why you'd want to play with that idea. I mean, it's not an immediate hit in any way. If you wanted to make a game based off Old Testament stories, there's plenty of stories in the Old Testament where the 12 tribes went to war with other people, and you could easily have a historical war simulator, and that would be a much more interesting story to tell. Or you could pick a story with more angels and demons and things like that. That'd be a much more interesting story to tell. There's just because the story of Noah is very recognizable doesn't make it particularly good. At least for turning and converting it into an interactive media. So yeah, every game that's tried to sell itself on religiosity has always come up short as shallow and a pathetic effort. And I could probably apply that to a lot of the other forms of entertainment that base themselves on Christianity too, is that they often seem like they are low effort products designed to be sold to people who are either a captive audience or just not a very discerning audience, and so they'll buy any junk regardless. Even the Wolfenstein 3D clone of Noah's Ark doesn't really feel like a good enough game to deserve to exist. I oddly need to hurry up just because I'm managing to get victories and win, and so did I like that match? Yeah, I had fun in that match because I won. I'm gonna say I have fun in any match I win. TechRaptor has an article here. SCUF data breach exposes 1.1 million customer records. Apparently this is a third-party controller developer, and it seems like they do something interesting with the PlayStation controller. Actually, this looks rather nice for a PlayStation controller. I still don't really like the way the triggers form, but they might feel pretty good. And here you have a analog stick where the D-pad would be and a D-pad where the analog stick would be, which effectively makes it a Microsoft controller. This D-pad could be an 8-way D-pad. I kind of prefer that, and it doesn't hugely matter to me what the buttons say. And then you got the touchscreen and the microphone and everything from what looks like the PlayStation 4 would be. But I've never heard of this company Scuf before, so unless you've done business with them before, you should be fine, I would imagine. And generally, I don't think I'd be buying a third-party controller from a direct website. So, like, as long as sites like Amazon.com don't lose people's records, I'd be fairly safe. Here we've got another one of these. Let's cover this article and see if it works itself through, but I don't think it will. Gamasutra has an obituary here for the mathematician and Game of Life creator John Conway. Let's see. He worked as a professor since 1987, so yeah. He was probably in his 30s or 40s in 87. Real old school. Let's see. He devised a zero-player game in 1970 and created simulation games. Yep, it's a shame, but those things were gonna happen. Like people were gonna die, and so far the people that have died aren't even like major losses. And what's gonna be really weird is we're gonna see almost certainly a lot of Japanese game developers succumbing to COVID-19 because Japan's coverage and their number of respirators and beds are incredibly low. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing a lot younger creators and a lot more relevant video game creators passing away, and it could drastically change the landscape of video games, really, because if we lose people at Capcom, Square Enix, Nintendo, Sony, like, if you start losing a lot of those people, or even a decent number of those people, entire companies might shut down, teams won't be the same, they won't have the feel. For love him or hate him, the creator of Death Stranding, like, Death Stranding doesn't exist if the creator of Death Stranding isn't there. Like, so there could be some real major changes there, and delays of games just not happening. Certainly a lot of the niche game companies could shut down if they lose their person, and not just in video games but anime too. If, like, Miyazaki, who owns Studio Ghibli, or is the main guy at Studio Ghibli, he's been trying to retire because he's so old for probably half a decade now, and he just cannot retire because even though his son, he works at the company, who's also pretty old, his son just does not pull it off and catch people's attention, tell his interesting stories, or do his interesting animations, or whatever. So yeah, it was, even before COVID-19, very likely that as soon as Miyazaki died, Studio Ghibli would mostly shut down or become just a completely different style of company that wasn't making its own movies. That certainly could happen if we lost major people, whether you can even name them or not, at Nintendo, or a lot of the third-party companies. I would say anime in particular might be a little bit insulated, because there was already the Keone Animation Fire, I believe was the company that there was an arsonist, crazy person, set a fire at one of the animation buildings, and it, I think, killed a small handful of animators, but it was more than enough to potentially shut down the whole company forever, and it's not 100% guaranteed that it didn't shut down the whole company forever. So losing that talent was a big deal, but on the other hand, a lot of anime only goes for a season or two anyways, so as long as there's somebody else willing to step up and work for awful terms and low pay and long hours, I imagine one season or two seasons of animes would be affected at most, and then that would be it. Plus, since anime is mostly based off either mangas or light novels, that production wouldn't be as affected. And you could lose some voice actors and things like that, but there's just so many people that want to be in those industries, they mostly get replaced, unless, and this is a possibility, unless COVID-19 just goes rampant. They're talking potentially 400,000 deaths in Japan, which is a lot considering the population. So if it more than decimates, but just completely devastates Japan as a culture, that could be a big problem. Japan was already being encroached on by China. If there's half a population there, I wouldn't be surprised if China decided to just try and annex the whole country, which I mean, they've been fairly consistent about trying to do that with other countries, and they seem pretty obvious that they're not going to stop until they have close to total world domination. So yeah, video game industry could suffer a lot more than it has already. Just if we start losing a lot of Japanese game developers. There's a very long list of games that have third-party support and help from Asian game creators that often don't get mentioned. And certainly I would lose a lot of interest in video games if only Western games were coming out, if it was just Call of Duties and things like that non-stop. I think we can win here. So all I need to really do is remember to tap this character, and then I can just pass the turn after that. Next we have a game on Steam here called Amber Time, which looks like it's a low effort simulation game of some sort. It doesn't look interesting, whatever it is. It's $11.24 discounted English and Chinese. That is way too expensive for what looks like MS Paint graphics. I'll just keep on playing cards. TechRaptor has an article. Step aside, Doom Eternal. Chex Quest HD is coming. I believe this had already been announced, and I think it's coming out free. Although maybe you get some codes if you actually buy some kind of Chex cereal, and those codes might unlock some extra things. So yeah, I don't think there's really a lot of relevancy though to play a Doom skin, which is effectively what Chex Quest is. It does have maybe a little bit of historical relevancy, but yeah, it's not really worth people's time. And I'm sure if you have some memories of it, or if you just want to goof, it might make a funny 20-minute live stream video, and that's about it. I could see PewDiePie covering it just to be silly, but nobody really needs to legitimately play it. Speaking of PewDiePie, he was actually #1 trending either on gaming or it was either on the video game category or just trending in general, which I'll take either, because that's kind of shocking. He was pretty much blacklisted from being on trending for a long time, so I guess he's back and as popular as possible. And his little I'm gonna take a break for a month, or I'm gonna take a break for a while and then he comes back a month later was the right move for him. I don't know if there's too much more to say there, other than like half of his content is somewhat interesting, but it's the other half is pretty bad. So we're just gonna attack, I think that's what we're gonna do. We'll just have to hit him 4 different times. Or not. TechRaptor has an article here. Remnant from the Ashes, Swamps of Corsus DLC debuts a survival mode. I don't remember Remnant from the Ashes at all, though. It kind of sounds like it might be like an asynchronous player versus player mode, but now it has like a roguelike experience. Is Remnant from the Ashes that weird game that people were talking about for about a week? It's a pretty great third-person shooter that gives players an intriguing roguelike experience. Okay. So I need to do more research on Remnant from the Ashes and see if that's something that would intrigue me. Honestly, I could really do for playing something different that I just haven't heard about. I've been running into one too many games that I've played before, and they're the second playthrough they're not as interesting as I once found them. And something fresh and new, something to revitalize my love of video games would be great. But that might be as much as just my current attitude at the time I'm playing the game versus the game itself. So there might be no fixing how I feel about some games when I play them. There definitely are times when I'm just not in the mood. Apparently I don't have enough mana to tap this guy, which is something I really needed to do. Next we have a game on Steam called Probe, which looks like it is a black and white Arkanoid clone. Almost called it a Galaga clone. $1.79 discounted, whole bunch of languages, claiming to have full audio in all of them. Nothing there of any interest. Tech Raptor has an article here. Player draft comes to Magic the Gathering Arena. Okay, great. We knew this. It'll be interesting to see how that really affects things. Though, and it would kind of suck, as you see a timer here, if my overlay system actually messes us up. Apparently there's going to be a visual representation as far as the packs being picked and passed. So a draft here of 8 characters includes 5, 6, 7, 8 packs of draft packs. See, the entrance fee will be 10,000 gold or 1,500 gems, which I think is more expensive than before. And if you get 3 wins, you get 6 packs and 3,000 gems. If you get 2 wins, you get 1,000 gems and 4 packs. If you get 0 to 1 win, you get 1 pack. And this is 3 matches. So it seems like draft is getting more expensive, but maybe a little bit quicker. But also my understanding on how you play draft in the real world is different. So I think what you're doing in draft is you're playing against all of these characters too. So at the same time, I think that's what you're doing. But maybe not. Maybe it is kind of more randomized, just player versus player. But there definitely is a Magic gameplay. There's some form of Magic you play where you're playing against multiple enemies, and that's going to be weird when you have to start selecting targets and the screen is going to somehow have to depict 2 or 3 enemies. I just screwed up there. Let's just let this end. Let's see. Hopefully we don't drop down from gold tier 4. I don't think we can. That would be nice to go up higher. If we could actually get to platinum in the next week or two before the season ends, that'd be great. Next, Gamma Sutra has an article, Breaking Walls nets 1.75 million to push ahead with Away, the survival series. Don't recall Away, the survival series as a game, but it clearly is just in development. So it's no surprise that I don't recall it. Here we have a game on Steam called Saturn Quest Shadow of the Planets. And it looks like a shoot 'em up game. It is widescreen, so I have to applaud that. But I don't really like the art style. This blue is a little ugly, and it seems like it kind of has some walking RPG elements also, instead of all being a complete shoot 'em up, which is a little weird. Usually you don't have shoot 'em ups where you walk around. This is $2.99 and it's English only. And actually that is far too cheap for a shoot 'em up, considering how there's a lot of competition in that field and a lot of Japanese shoot 'em up developers that are willing to charge a pretty penny for a good product. And this will ruin that. Next we have Peekaboo Collection 3 Tales of Horror, which just by the title alone I think is probably an asset flip horror game. By the looks of it, it does seem like this art is really not super connected to this art. And I'm not seeing any gameplay mechanics really other than swinging an axe. And yeah, this really just looks like an asset flip horror game. It's $2.99 English full audio. That's too cheap. Also, let's go ahead and play this. Go ahead and play that. Didn't know attack. I keep going through bouts of being cold. Hopefully I'm not running a fever or something, but I guess I wouldn't be running a fever if I'm feeling cold, though. I'd be having chills if I was feeling cold, so that's probably not the problem. I think we're just hitting a specific point where it's right between a rainy season and a more dry season, and it's kicking up allergies and causing my air conditioner to improve. I use an Ecobee smart thermostat, which I'd still probably mostly recommend people use a Nest, particularly since Nest now does have remote sensors, and that was the thing that moved me from a Nest to an Ecobee in the first place. But they did update their software. They've changed their icons, and their software does seem to have some small improvements to its features. But it took them a really long time to put out any kind of significant feature updates, and it still really doesn't have everything that I would expect it to have or like it to have. Very often I think the problem is that my computer is just pouring out a ridiculous amount of heat, and because of that ridiculous amount of heat that it's pouring out into my room, it heats up my one room that I'm in way more than the rest of the house, so the rest of the house gets very cold, and it's just unconnected. If I had a choice, I think the next time I would try to build a computer room, I would probably have the computer in a different room. Like have one room that is almost completely designated to be allowed to get really hot while gaming and streaming, and then just have like an HDMI and a USB cord coming out of a wall hole, and so just like on one side of the wall, that's your streaming area where you're getting the video and the audio for the controllers and the stuff like that, and then in the other room, that's where the actual computer with all the CPU and everything is making noise and making heat. Of course, you shouldn't actually dedicate an entire room to a computer. So, yeah, I would probably just have the bedroom, my bedroom, have the computer in it, or no, it would be easier just to have a spare bedroom, have the computer in it, and then my current bedroom be the streaming location. Yeah, that would work way better. Unfortunately, I can't really do that. Of course, that also throws me for a loop because I already have a spare bedroom that has my backup server in it. So then it would just be 2 computers in one room, which may not be too big of a deal, although it starts to get to a dangerous amount of amperage draw, depending on how powerful those computers are. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Receiver 2, which I heard Giant Bomb talking about this. It's like a game that simulates the gun elements, so the slides, the pistons, the springs, all that. It's supposed to be like a hyper realistic gun simulation thing, but I don't know if there's really a game there so much. And even if it does have a game, it seems like it's mostly so obsessed about the gun simulation that that it doesn't have anything else to sell. But then when I think about it, I'm thinking, didn't Receiver 1 also have like a story to it? Well, regardless, this is rated very positively, so I'm going to put it on the follow list and think about that. Because even if there isn't a story here, this might really be like the most realistic gun simulation game out there, and that would maybe give it enough relevancy for me to justify covering it and playing that game for like a spotlight. If there really is no actual interactive game, after a certain point I wouldn't spend too much time on it though. Or if it's just kind of a generic shooter. It is something different. It is a smart way to try and make your game stand out and be a different experience by saying, hey, we're going to focus on this element that other people have not bothered to focus on, which is hyper realisticness. In the same way that racing games all went the way of being hyper realistic visual depictions of real world cars, or almost all of them did. Very few racing games out there that just have generic car skins that people want to play. Or if you're going to do anything, you make a Mario Kart game and then you go the opposite direction where it's no intention of being realistic at all. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Song of Six SYX is a huge scale city kingdom builder with a free prototype. This obviously is a hype article, and from that thumbnail alone I'm not really interested, but I'm also not really interested based on the description of what kind of game it is. So as long as this guy doesn't do a board clear, I think I can pretty well win here. Still have a lot of tabs, more than I thought I did. Here's the article we talked about earlier. The ESRB loot box rating will warn parents about microtransactions. The exact phrase, those in-app purchases, parentheses, includes random items, though not loot boxes. And that will include to content like loot boxes, gacha games, item and card packs, prize wheels, treasure chests, non-randomized paid elements, and more. I don't know why in-app purchases includes random items would fall under that category of non-randomized paid elements, unless they mean that there are like prize wheels and the items on the prize wheels are not randomized, but there's a random chance of what you'll get. And there's definitely some games out there that sort of randomize what they offer to you based on your previous purchase history and the things you own. I wouldn't be surprised if the daily deals in Magic Arena are specifically customized to your account and the cards you have or don't have. If they aren't now, I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually do become that. So yeah, it's a small step forward for the video game lobbying companies' own ratings board, but it's a step forward nonetheless. It also kind of reminds and pushes out the fact that there was really no progress made at all in as far as the United States in actually threatening or legislating video games, where there was I would say a decent amount of progress made by the UK and other countries to threaten and limit the bad behavior of video game companies. And so the ESRB is really just kind of catching up with the times. I don't think I'm gonna win this turn, but this should do something rather interesting, because these cards should come back to my control. Nope, he countered it, which was his best move. Next we have a Gematsu article, and we probably won't have too many of those in the next month or so. Timelie, LIE, official trailer and screenshots. It's due out for PC this spring, so looks like a slightly interesting game. Looks like it might be an isometric kind of puzzle game of some sort. Girl and cats avoiding robots, and she controls time. Almost like a... No, I wouldn't call it like a Lara Croft Go type game, because there was no like real-time movement system there. And it seems like you might clone yourself, or you might just work with your cat to pull off some tricks. Come on, play. It doesn't look amazingly interesting, but it might not be bad, as long as it's cheap and not a huge amount of time. Although, maybe I need to get a little bit more picky. That's always a possibility as far as these kind of games. TechRaptor has an article, Night Dive CEO on the challenges of Blade Runner Enhanced Edition, which just seems like this is an actual interview with TechRaptor, which TechRaptor often, very rarely gets interviews. That's surprising. So this Blade Runner Enhanced Edition, I think, was just kind of like a remaster of the Blade Runner point and click adventure game. But looking at this art, that seems a little bit better than what I was expecting. And this is just a screenshot from the movie, I'm fairly certain. The major problem here, though, with Night Dive Studios is they've just got a lot on their plate as far as games go, and games that they're trying to remaster and re-release, and it's really feels like it's a house of cards just being built up until either Night Dive Studios just goes out of business because they're not making any money, or they just release something that's particularly bad. And System Shock in particular was the one that may prove to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Next, we have a game on Steam called Heaven World, which this just looks like an asset flip resource management game. Fortnite clone, somewhat. I don't know why you'd call it Heaven World. If you're going to use such a bold name, you would have to do something really interesting with it, and they definitely didn't. They went $23.99 discounted, and it's English and French in the languages. This is weird. We have Deadliest to Catch, the game, coming out. This came out for other consoles a long time ago, so did it just now leave early access, or did they pull it and try to relist it? Like, Deadliest Catch the game was one of the worst games to come out for consoles a couple years ago. Maybe there was a different Deadliest Catch. There was also Most Deadly Warrior, the game, that was also a pretty bad game, I think was the name of that one. Regardless, so you can see this is mixed, so there's no reason for me to put that on the follow list. Now we need this guy tapped for sure. I don't even know if this guy being tapped really is going to affect much. TechRaptor also has this editorial, TechRaptor Staff's Video Game Confessions. I wanted to see what this was. There's a pre-order disaster. There's a taste test of a Switch console. There's a Poke fraud. Apparently one of the Pokemon games might start banning people for disconnecting. By the way, I think the most recent Pokemon game. There's a pro catfish story here, an amateur catfish story. And then the final person just says, I want to Ouya. And then they give the author credits to a staff writer and an image here. They're not even saying the name of the author who assembled these other articles or paragraphs. Well, it says it's by Austin Sutherland, so, or Sutter. Interesting. It just doesn't say his name. Maybe my ad blocker that I had set up is blocking that, but none of those confessions are particularly interesting. I didn't think they would be, but I figured there might be a chance. I don't know what kind of video game confessions would be that interesting though. Everybody's probably cheated on some single player game, and a lot of people probably even cheated on some multiplayer games. People have definitely done things they're not really proud of, but mostly on video games, since it is just a form of entertainment, and everybody should be just acting relaxed and not worrying about their mistakes. That they really don't have a lot to confess there. Let's see. Like, I don't really feel bad about any of the bad things I've ever done in a video game to any video game character, or any dark alleys I've taken the story, like, because it's just all fiction. And I particularly don't play multiplayer games, so I haven't ever really harassed anybody. In fact, probably the worst things I've ever done is playing apples to apples and then suggesting like really dirty or dark answers, which often cause me to win the rounds in apples to apples. So I was just playing the game the right way, subversively. I've also never really felt the need to go back and like save scum on most games for any decision I've made. Yeah. So I don't think I have any video game confessions. Like, moving on, we have a game called Solos, as I'm losing. This looks like a pencil and paper / MS Paint artwork game. I think it's some kind of Arkanoid game, but I can't even really tell. It's early access, requires a controller, and it's $9.99. Numbers on the achievements, English and full audio allegedly. Yeah. Nope, I lost on that one. I didn't enjoy that game. I'm just gonna send that feedback. I didn't enjoy games I lost. I did enjoy games I won. Let's see. His next game is just a mess of asset flips and low effort screenshots alone. So here we have a game called Voxel Horizon, which just has anime girls on top of anime girls on top of anime girls, and basically they're trying to have you put together Unity assets and Unity demos themselves and make your own game. Just absolute garbage. There's no reason why Valve should have allowed this on Steam. It's tagged as a massive multiplayer game, as single player with online PvP and online co-op MMO, English and Japanese. It's garbage. They want $9.99 for it. And I guess I have to say it's either English garbage or Japanese garbage, considering those are the two languages it supports. It is also totally possible that some other country makes garbage games and then doesn't even support their own primary language, but that breaks my whole line of speculating as far as what country, region games are from. So I conveniently pretend like that option doesn't exist. TechRaptor has an article. WWE 2K21 has reportedly been canceled, but some new WWE game is still coming this year. So they had trouble, I think, with the developer of 2K20. So with the ability to blame COVID-19, now is the perfect time for them to take a year off, try to fix the game, try to make it not be a horrible mess of bugs, and make something that actually has some value to a new audience instead of the ever shrinking audience of hardcore WWE fans. But they very well may not do that. They may just come out with a 2K 2022 and it may be just as bad as the previous games in the series. THQ Nordic had a Spellforce 3 update note. I don't think that was why I had the thing open. No. I think they had this. Desperados 3 is getting a collector's edition. And I've not really heard of this game, Desperados. And it's kind of weird that there's 3 of them. So I wanted to do some research and figure out what kind of game that even is. And unfortunately, the trailer doesn't really tell me. Let's see. Komatsu has an article. The adventure game Null the Mortal Fate is coming to the PS4 and Xbox One and Switch. It's published by Playism. I haven't heard anything from Playism in a while, and developed by Koano. So let's see if there's like a trailer here that kind of tells what kind of game it is. No. It seems to have 8 seasons. Almost like it was a anime movie or show. Has a Steam page. Let's see if we can. Oh, okay. I remember this game. It's on my wish list. It's an RPG game that apparently was popular enough. It's overwhelmingly positive, and so it overwhelmed even my hate for RPG Maker looking games to the point where it made it to the wish list. $14.99, depending on how long it actually is. It says it has 8 seasons in that story. Let's see. Can I figure out how much time? About 2 hours for one season, according to one reviewer. About maybe 30 hours. I can't read the numbers. About 100 hours. Interesting. What's really interesting about that is that it's kind of late to the party in that it's coming out to consoles, and by the time it is coming out to consoles, it probably would want to hit the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I still don't really expect that there's much of a Switch 2 chance coming out anytime soon. And honestly, I guess now would be a great time to rush out your game to the PS4 and the Xbox One and the Switch if you were afraid that you weren't going to potentially lose sales because of the new consoles, because the new consoles might be delayed. So if you can finish the development of your game that would have been late to the party and actually get discs printed or sell it electronically only, you might have a better chance at a higher number of sales before the player bases get diluted a little bit between the new consoles and the old consoles. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Domino Simulator 2020, which might actually be a decent domino simulator. We've seen several of these before and they haven't been great though, so who knows. Why is it early access? Why is it $9.99? That's the question. Why does it have an achievement for placing 1 million pieces down? That seems kind of crazy too. But the beauty of the following list is something like this probably will never even get 20 reviews. So whenever I do the next follow list cleanup, I'll probably be able to just immediately remove it because it doesn't meet the requirements that way. It doesn't get enough people to review it to make it a relevant game. Speaking of cleanups, it has occurred to me maybe this is the beginnings of some kind of cabin fever or just full-on insanity on my part. It has occurred to me that I'd like to actually kind of implement an effort to do some house cleaning. Like, I have some stuff that needs to be thrown away and moved, and some things that could definitely use some dusting and such. Unfortunately, having just hurt my back and recovering from that, any kind of ambitious idea like that is an insane thought. Like, I can do a little here and there, but the major effort that I need to do or would like to do, I would almost certainly have to hire qualified people, and certainly don't want to do that right now. But yeah, it certainly has become a little bit noticeable. But it's also not terrible. It's not like I'm living in garbage or anything like that. It's just I'd like some it's more organization more than anything else. I'd like to clean out some stuff, but mostly just organize some stuff. Like, just get things more organized and nicer. And probably would be more honest to say I'd like somebody else to clean my house, not me, and organize my house. But that isn't going to happen. One, maybe two more games, and then we'll be done for today. Next we have Summer Girls. So here's another anime jigsaw puzzle with very few pieces. One assumes they license all these images. It's a little surprising that this came out on a Tuesday or Wednesday instead of being held to a Friday. But on the other hand, it isn't tagged with any sexual content or nudity, so maybe it slips by because of that. It's 59 cents discounted, a whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio. Yeah, same old garbage. There was a maybe month even, I'll say, in which we stopped seeing anime jigsaw puzzles and we would see other jigsaw puzzle games come out, but yeah, seems like they're back to the anime girls. I guess the dinosaur jigsaw puzzles weren't selling as much, or the other kind, which I would have imagined they never would have. Let's see. And we have to listen to this guy. Still, I would hoped that the update at some point would have let us mute these guys, but no. Next we have a game on Steam called Bird Missions, which seems like you're flying around as a bird collecting coins, and it seems like you're flying around asset flip environments. If this was 2 or 3 levels more polished, I would think this is a potential game I'd want to play, but visually it just kind of looks dull, and it looks like that's all you're doing is flying around and trying to collect coins in generic environments. It's early access, 69 cents discounted, English only. Yeah, if only it had a little bit more, I might be willing to give it a try, or give it a follow at least. See, next we have a game called Station Flow, which looks like it's a subway simulator game. It doesn't look terrible. It's rated very positively. It's already on the fall list, so let's see. Does it meet the requirements of having 20 reviews? Yes, by far. It's $15.29 discounted. It's a whole bunch of languages. Apparently it's version 1.0 now. So I guess it's coming out of early access. And very rarely do we have games coming out of early access, but yeah, I'm going to put this on the follow list. That being said, creating your own like transfer station, transit subway station, to improve the walking flow of people, which is what it seems like this game is. It's pretty niche and weird, so I'm not sure I'd actually ever buy that game. It very possibly is one of those games that at best I could do a spotlight on, at worst I would have just wasted my money on completely. Next we have Hard Rock Pinball. And while this doesn't look like a good game, it does kind of have that throwback to a DOS era pinball game, which is kind of interesting visually, just to remind me and have some nostalgia, but I wouldn't put it on the fall list. They want $4.99 for it, which is way too expensive. It's English only. Seems like it only has one pool table. This is a huge far cry away from things like Pinball Arcade and Pinball FX3. Yep, it seems like we're going to be just stuck at gold tier 4, which is probably all that's going to happen. And then I'm going to have to play a little bit off screen. Oh, I should mention that it turns out Dish now has this ability, if you have a hopper, at least. I have 2 hopper ones, and one of them, hard drive, seems to be failing. You can plug in a Ethernet cord to the back of one hopper and to the back of the other. And there's like 2 Ethernet ports, one on the top and then one on the bottom. So the image says you have to plug them into the top. But after you do that, you can go through the menu, and there's an option that wasn't there before called Restore Recordings, and it will actually slowly, very slowly, considering how they're plugged in back directly to each other through a network cord, it will slowly move the videos over from one hopper to the other, which this is a huge improvement, frankly, because the only thing they had before that point is that you had to activate the ability to plug in a hard drive. I think they've abandoned actually having to pay extra at this point in plugging in a hard drive. But even at that, you still had to plug in certain hard drives because many of them would not work. And then you would have to back up and move all your videos to the hard drive and hope that those videos would work on a different hopper. I'm not sure they ever actually would. For most things, a TV DVR records and gets it. You don't really need that. You can just catch the reruns and record it. But there are a few things I have had over the 5 years plus that I've had my hopper that just were special one-time events that never get rerun. So there's just no chance of ever getting it. So there's a lot of recovery there. Plus, it's just going to save me a lot of time if I had to re-record every episode of Good Eats. There's like 200 episodes of Good Eats that I have, and that's probably something I don't need, but something I'd kind of like to keep. So I'm happy for that. Of course, once I'm done moving it from the broken hopper to the good hopper, I need to replace even the good hopper with a hopper 3, which can record way more video things at the same time and have a lot more space, because I'm going to be right at 100%. I guess I was wrong about being stuck at 111 level. It does seem like it just keeps going up and up. But yeah, I might report back that how long it takes to copy an entire hard drive almost completely full from a hopper 1, but at the rate it seems like it will be 4 or 5 days, just because, yeah, video files, even compressed video files from satellite TVs, they're big. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Capcom is implementing a work-from-home policy until the early May. So, yeah. Resident Evil developer, Monster Hunter developer. If COVID-19 takes out anybody majorly influential in either of those series, that drastically changes the video game world forever. Like, if we can't have any more good Resident Evils, if Japan can't get any more good Monster Hunter games, like if no more Monster Hunter games ever got made, I'm not sure if Japan wouldn't have a significant percentage of people just stop playing video games in totality. That's how big Monster Hunter has been. Next, we have a game on Steam here that's just a bunch of Asian characters. This looks like this is probably a cell phone port of a Chinese game. Doesn't look terrible, but English won't be supported. It's free, so the price is good. It's Chinese only. Doesn't have in-app purchases. Yes, it does. So I don't know why you'd want to play a cell phone game on a PC, but if that's the only option you have. That was another story I saw, was that with COVID-19 hitting Asian countries, there are basically homeless people that have been living inside of gaming centers, like playing games just 24/7, and the gaming centers, the PC gaming centers, also tend to have facilities enough that you're not starving to death or living in filth so much. But as the gaming centers are being shut down now, those homeless people are potentially now actually on the streets. So that displaces more people that were already displaced, which certainly isn't helpful. Next, we have a game called Cards, the World War II card game. I might be willing to play something like this. It's rated very positively. It's a little bit limited, and it feels sort of like Gwent in that there's 2 rows. But yeah, this is a free-to-play game with in-app purchases, though. I think what I have to say, though, is I'll leave it on the following list and suggest, if you're big into World War II, and that's the big if, do you want to play a collectible card game with artwork and references to World War II? And if you don't, then you probably don't want to play this game. And if you do, there does seem to be a rather large community here playing cards, playing it for free. But yeah, I think that'll be pretty much where it stays, though. I guess if I got really, really desperate and didn't want to play Magic anymore, and the second dinner collectible game, card game, Marvel collectible card game, hadn't come out yet still, maybe I would try Cards, but that'd be a big maybe. Next, we have a game on Steam called Chess Cake. It almost looks like cheesecake, but it's chess cake, and it looks like it's checkers. Really, it doesn't seem like you're actually playing chess at all. So yeah, that's weird, and I think that eliminates this from consideration immediately. It's $11.39. It's English full audio. There's a little bit too much junk around the board also. Somebody just asset flipping 3D models into it, it seems like. Next, we have a game called Peasants War, which looks like it's probably an asset flip hack and slash game, I guess that would be the category. So not a first person shooter in this case, even though you are shooting with a bow and arrow in some of these screenshots. It's free. It's online player versus player. English only. Almost certainly won't have any player base. We actually have quite a bit of tabs. I could have probably played another game, but I'm kind of tired of playing them. Komatsu has an article, Double Dragon and Kunio Kun Retro Brawler Bundle and Jake Hunter Detective Story Prism of Eyes titles are due out standalone on April 16th in Japan. 24 titles planned for release. I think these two games were released previously as some kind of bundle. But, alright. I don't know if they're going to be released in the West. I would suspect maybe not. Because they also kind of look like they're rather old games getting re-released. Komatsu has an article here. Kowloon Yuma Goken Ki Origin of Adventure opening movie. Again, this looks like something that's a little bit older. Either that or it's a visual novel of some sort that they're trying to highlight. Looks like a dungeon crawler, actually. It looks like a pretty ugly dungeon crawler. But they're also tagging it as a visual novel, so maybe I was right the first time. Regardless, the game is due out for Switch on June 4th at Japan. I doubt it will make it over. Fairy Tail game adds non-playable guest party characters Ultir, Leon, Flare, and Minerva. Which, okay. If you're playing a Fairy Tail game that's coming out in June 25th, and you know who these characters are, you're probably more excited. Now, they're trickling out more information. Here we have a game called Straight On 8, which looks like a VR shot put game. And if these things would load, doesn't look terrible. So if this was cheap, I'd put it on the fall list. It's early access. It's $10.99, English only. I'll give it a follow. Like it's not a terrible thing, kind of like a Duck Hunt VR game without actually shooting ducks, which I don't think I'd really want hyper realistic duck hunting in VR. Maybe they could make it cartoony enough to catch my interest. Although I'm not sure VR fixes itself quite right for a duck hunt style game. I still kind of feel like I'd prefer to have a plastic light gun in my hand, even now. Next we have a game on Steam called Alchemy Story. It's already rated very positively. And it looks like it is for little kids. So is it rated very positively because kids like it? Or is it rated very positively because they just got a lot of people to review it for them? $15.99. English full audio. Let's see. Super cute game, fun and engaging. A lot of these are early access reviews. There's nothing to strive for, Snowtown to build or house to pay off. I don't think I particularly would hate a game that didn't have those artificial elements in it. But I don't know about this art style. Like, I don't know if this is an art style that deserves to exist or if this is just kind of a low effort animation. I'm gonna leave this on the follow list. It still deserves some more consideration, and clearly I'm not willing to make a decision right now. Open Critic has an article. The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners devs ask for patience for the PlayStation VR version. So they're apparently taking too long. Let's see. Komatsu has an article. Team 17 is going to publish a magnetic platformer called Super Magbot for PC in 2021. It's going to look something like this. I don't know how a magnetic platformer would play differently. Apparently it's Peggy 7s, which might be my level of skill in platformers. I don't know why you'd call something Peggy 7 when it looks like it could very easily be way frustrating for people way older than 7. I'd almost have to see how the controls work on this game, because if you're using magnets to fling yourself around, are you going to have to pull the left trigger and the right trigger all over the place to switch your polarity? And is it going to be a game where you're using a lot of buttons and a lot of triggers all the time? Because I've had some games like that, and they're pretty frustrating when you're having to push 3 or 4 buttons at the same time. TechRuptor has an article, Conan Exile's Followers 2 update lets you command your followers. I'm really surprised they're still giving support updates or content updates to Conan Exiles 2. It's just not going to happen. And unfortunately, I just don't think any Conan game is ever going to really succeed. It's just too expensive a license. If you were going to make a Conan game, there's really no reason to put Conan in the name at all, and instead just spend that money to make a better game. Next, we have a game called Amendium, I guess, and seems like it's a split screen mostly game where you're shooting a bunch of things. It kind of feels like it's all over the place, and a lot of the backgrounds look pretty ugly, so I don't think it's anything worth playing. It's 69 cents discounted, which is way too cheap. English only. Yeah. Tried to look flashy and failed to have any consistency in its art style. Next we have a game called My Hole is a Mouth of Dirt, which I don't know what that means, but it's tagged also with sexual content, so I should be kind of careful. It seems to me like it's kind of a horror RPG. Normally I'd say, well, this looks like an RPG Maker game, but looking at this scene, that looks kind of uniquely drawn. That scene looks kind of uniquely drawn. This looks kind of generic. This looks somewhat generic. I'm willing to give this a try. It's free, so also maybe I really don't have to try it, and it's English and full audio. So yeah, this looks like a huge spooky horror RPG Maker game, and I guess since it's free I don't need to really cover it. Check it out if you want to, otherwise don't. And I have like 4 more tabs. Next we have a game on Steam called Horse Riding Deluxe, and I think if I could find a good horse riding game, I would play it and show it off. Always looking for games that are a little bit more targeted towards non-violent players, female players, young female players in particular. But unfortunately, almost all girl games, as they're typically described, are terrible. So wouldn't be surprised if this is terrible also. It's $19.99 early access, bunch of languages. And we'll put it on the follow and see. Visually it looks fine. Looks nice enough. I don't know how much variety really you demand in your horses. Just more the game has to have a good gameplay mechanic and play well, and the horses have to look somewhat decent. Gamma Sutra has an article. Valve is looking for devs to showcase games in the Summer Steam Game Festival. I think we already had talked about that, but apparently we're going to have a Summer Steam Game Festival. What I suppose will concern me is I think we're past the Chinese New Year and all of that, and I don't think there would have been a Valentine's Day sale, so it might be that there really aren't any Steam sales until about Black Friday. There might be a Halloween sale before then, which is probably a good thing because I doubt too many people are going to have much money to be buying extra games. If Valve was going to have a major sale, they probably should have it right now and try to get people to buy games because they're stuck in their houses. But maybe they're going to wait until kids get out of school or get out of homeschool, and thus the kids will maybe want to buy more games. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Agricola, which looks to me like it's a resource management game with some card elements. It's a farming sim with a board game. Interesting. And it's being published by Asmodee Digital, which typically I think those are pretty bad games. I'm going to put this on the follow list and we'll see if people like it. $9.99, whole bunch of languages, allegedly full audio. Right. Now I had to be really careful about this article from TechRaptor. Pokemon Pink was the creature catching game that never happened. The problem with TechRaptor is sometimes they have this series of fake articles that they published, and I haven't seen one lately, and so hopefully they've decided to stop putting out fake articles. But this kind of felt like a fake article. It also seems like it is particularly not being reported on by anybody else, so there's probably not any new information. But they were going to make a Pokemon Pink as a companion to Pokemon Yellow, and I don't think it was going to be particularly much different than Pokemon Yellow. And so they probably just chose against it. They didn't want to have it come out that they were trying to pander, I guess, specifically to girls. Or that I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo didn't think girls really wanted to play Pokemon anyways. Alright, well then that brings me to the Humble Bundle store, of which I see no Humble Bundles new. And that brings me to my Twitter feed, which I don't need to go down my Twitter feed at all. Like, I can just talk about anything new that happens on Friday, so forgive me if there's some major turn of events or bit of news that happened in the 2 or 3 hours we've been streaming, but let's just end it here. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.